Everyone, this is Nitya Ramachandra from the NR Hour Sports Show. This is episode 941. I'm joined by a really special guest. His name is David Huff. He's a former MLB pitcher. He played in the Japan League, KBO League, and he also played in the NPB League, which we'll get to also. And I'm just truly grateful to have him on the show today. What a great career he had in the majors and the other leagues that I just mentioned. But first of all, David, I just want to say thank you for joining the show. How are you and your family doing today?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me. It's been just a total blessing in disguise. We're here in Arizona. We're enjoying finally starting to cool down, starting to enjoy the weather now. And it seriously has gone by so fast. And now we're just kind of picking up where we left off and going from there.
Yeah. So I just want to start off with your childhood growing up. Obviously you grew up in California. And when did you get interested in playing baseball, and who would you say your biggest role model was in that when you picked baseball?
I started picking up a baseball when I was almost like 2, and probably by the time I was walking. And then my older brother, who was 5 years older than me, was getting into kid pitch. And so, of course, little brother syndrome, I wanted to do exactly what he was doing. So I picked up a ball and got to play catch with my dad. And I think I was still in diapers at the time. And I just started throwing, and he noticed that I was hitting him right in the glove. And all of a sudden he's like, okay, that was about 3 or 4 times right to the glove. And so he kind of started moving the target around like inside and outside. And sure enough, I was hitting those targets as well. And it was just a beeline straight to the glove. So that's when I think my dad realizes, like, we got something on our hands here that might be something pretty good. And so ever since then, I've just always been playing baseball. I grew up playing all sports except football because my parents didn't want me to get hurt. But they basically, they were behind me in everything I wanted to do. I was playing soccer for a very, very long time until I got to about high school, when I kind of had to make the decision on just, career paths, basically. My dad always kind of was pushing me towards baseball, and he was like, hey, you're pretty good at baseball. You should probably pursue that. But I love playing soccer. So, that was kind of always a hobby of mine and growing up. And so when I got to high school, it was baseball. And then one of my buddies from down the street was like, hey, I'm going to a basketball trial. You want to go play? And I was like, sure, why not? And I ended up making the team. So wow. It was basketball and baseball in high school, which was great because basketball got me in shape for baseball season. So it was awesome in that way because we just would run constantly. So for me, baseball has always been a staple in my life. It's even now with my boys, like, they love baseball. Not purely because their dad played baseball, but just because we watch the World Series, we watch the playoffs, we do all that stuff, and they love it. And they love being able to hit. We go in the backyard pretty much every day, if not every other day, doing some sort of baseball, something, anything, whether it's catch play, hitting, whatever. Most of the time it's hitting. But I grew up in California. I was in Huntington Beach my whole life. And then, I just ended up just basically playing baseball and going to school, and my mom was always making sure that I made grades. My dad was always making sure I was having time to baseball, to practice. And so it was a full on thing. So, but I loved every bit of it.
Yeah. So did you get to, before, obviously, did you get to play any other sports growing up while in high school, or just focus mainly on baseball?
The main focus was baseball. I think my whole family knew that I was going to go that path. And I played soccer, and I really enjoyed soccer. I loved it a lot. And it got to a point where I had to make a decision because it was almost like we were narrowing the pathway, because I was doing basketball, I was doing soccer, I was playing pickup football with my buddies in the neighborhood. Golf wasn't really a big thing because it was right during baseball season. I wish it wasn't, because I love golf now. Mm-hmm. It was just one of those things, like, you just kind of had to start cutting back. And so when I got to high school, it was like, okay, let's focus on baseball. That's the most consistent thing we're doing here. But it was a thing that I still loved playing other sports, and it helped me with just my athletic ability, like using your feet to obviously kick a soccer ball, dribbling the basketball using both hands. It just uses different parts of your brain. And so for me, it wasn't just solely baseball. So, basketball took over when I was in high school. And then once I obviously got to college, then it was strictly baseball. I didn't do anything outside of that. Occasionally I'd probably sneak away and play some golf, but other than that, it was solely baseball. It was fun. Like I enjoyed everything.
Yeah. So speaking of, so in high school, obviously senior year is really important. That's when all the scholarships come in, or whether or not you're going to sign to college or go right to the draft from high school. But for you, tell our fans about your process and what did you learn as a senior in high school, becoming the better pitcher before going to
Well,
college.
I was always kind of academic driven. My mom always pushed me to work harder in the class and in school. And we had our fights every once in a while because I was like, no, I want to go take some ground balls at the park, or I want to go pitch, or I want to go hit. And so, for me, it was an ongoing battle, but it was academic driven. Come my senior year, I was focused on making grades. But then, there were like I ended up getting drafted by the Angels in high school.
Yeah.
And I was excited because it was the hometown team. I was like, heck yes. I was like, there, you guys are 20 minutes from my house. This is awesome. This is a kid's dream. And I wasn't drafted in like the first 20 rounds or anything special like that. Like I was drafted kind of in like I think it was like the 39th or something like that. It was way back there. So for me, it was one of those things like I wanted to go play professional ball, but then I also had UC Irvine, which was John Savage at the time, offer me a scholarship to go play at UC Irvine. So it was free education. And so for me, it was like, okay, I went to go try out, and I threw a bullpen in front of, at the time it was Mike Sosha and Bud Black were the two coaches. And I actually ended up missing my grad night because the next morning I had the tryout, or not really a tryout, but like a showcase for them because they already drafted me. So the school was not happy about that. They were like, no, you're supposed to, this is your last night with all your friends. Like you're supposed to party, have a good time. And I was like, no, I got more important things. I got to, go through a bullpen for the Anaheim Angels. And they understood, which was nice. They didn't give me too much flack about it, but I went out the next morning, I threw a great bullpen for them, and they were really happy with what they saw. But to me, it was like, I can get 3 years of education before I get drafted again, 3 years of development, both physically and mentally, as far as pitching goes, and just be just a better all-around pitcher, like a more polished and finished product by my junior year of college. Because high school, it's like, yeah, you're there, you're out there, you're throwing strikes. You really don't know what it means to be like a professional pitcher. You have no idea. You just know that you're going off of God-given talent. You're not really lifting that much. So your strength isn't really there. For me, I was throwing like 87, 89 in high school. And then I got to like college, and I was 160, 170 pounds soaking wet. And so I had to like basically beef up. Like I had to bulk up for college guys, because these guys were monsters compared to me. And so like I would have never, it probably would have been a lot harder of a path if I chose to sign out of high school rather than take the extra time to develop in college.
So obviously out of high school, you got drafted by the Angels, and just to tell us about that process once you got drafted and realizing that you made your dream to get to the majors. But You didn't end up playing for the Angels at that point. You went to the Cleveland Indians. So tell us about that process. How did that work out?
So yeah, I got drafted by the Angels, and I was there, and I was, I wasn't going to be making much money in the signing bonus or anything like that. So, and I kind of was already leaning towards going to college. So I made some ridiculous offer. I said, offer me $1 million and I'll sign right here on the dotted line. And it was just some bogus, like, they probably thought that who does this kid think he is asking for this? Like, you got drafted in, 35th round plus. Like, who do you think you are? Probably is what was probably going through their mind. But I just made some ridiculous offer, and if they did it, and they called my bluff, and they're like, okay, yeah, done. And I would have been like, what do I do now? So I was like, I already was leaning towards college. So I ended up going to UC Irvine, played for John Savage my freshman year, ended up becoming the Tuesday starter. It was awesome. I loved it. It was beautiful ballpark, beautiful team, like great team. Everybody, obviously as a freshman, you stay in the dorms, but then once you're out of the dorms, then you get to go live in Newport Beach, which is gorgeous. And so I after our season, we played very well, but after our season, Coach Savage left and went to UCLA. I believe Dan Guerrero, who was the AD at the time at Irvine, quit and went to UCLA and became the AD over there. Well, I didn't know this, but behind the scenes, he was trying to recruit Savage to go to UCLA.
Right.
And when that happened, the whole team found out, and we were like, we're not playing for any other coach. Like, the whole team was just done. Like, they wanted to leave, and pretty much like UC Irvine would have never had a baseball program after that day if Dave Serrano, who came in from Fullerton, if he didn't somehow persuade guys to stay. What ended up happening is that he obviously convinced everybody to stay. And then with me, I was like, you know what? You didn't recruit me out of high school. I'm sorry to say this, but I don't want to play for you. Like, I wasn't good enough for you out of high school. Why do I have any interest in playing for you now? And so, being heavily recruited by John Savage, I was like, I'm going to UCLA. So Irvine decided to say, nah, we're not going to let you do that. You can go to a JC for a year, or you can go out of conference. And out of conference, and they said anything outside of teams we play, basically. So they play UCLA like on twice a year, and they made some excuse that, that'll affect our record for playoffs and all that stuff and regionals. And I'm like, that's kind of a cop out. Like, come on, guys, like, just let me go. Like, I'm the only person. Like, so I ended up going to Cypress JC for a year. After that year, I got drafted by the Philadelphia Phillies in the 19th round, and I was still kind of like leaning more towards academics than I was professional baseball. And they, I said, okay, if you guys can give me some, I made some ridiculous offer again, but it was like 900,000. And I was like, I still want to go to UCLA, and I was getting all my classes in that transfer over to UCLA, to the UC system. And eventually I got there. And I played another year with Savage again, and it was the second year. And we went out, and I was a Saturday guy. Hector Ambrose was our Friday night guy. Tyson Brummett, God rest his soul, was our Sunday guy. And yeah, it was we were really good. We went out after a 15-45 season the year before, and went out and just beat the crap out of everybody.
Wow.
And we were good. We took 2 of 3 at least. I don't even think we lost a series that year. May have lost 1 series. I doubt it, but I don't know. But yeah, then I got drafted by the Indians in 2006, and signed with them, and it was a 31st pick overall in the first round supplemental. So I had no desire to go for a senior year, because I had all the leverage to sign with them and got a pretty good offer and signed with them, and now the rest is history.
Wow, what an interesting story in background, because it's sometimes we never see players like baseball players go to college 2 times in a row and surpass the MLB offers and finally get the third one. But that's interesting. And for you, obviously, when you got drafted by the Indians, was that for you? How grateful are you just to say that you're sticking with that team and not focusing on the academics right there and then. Just what was your feeling when you got drafted by the Indians?
Oh, it was surreal. They flew me out to Cleveland. I met all the guys. Aaron, I mean, this is going to date myself a little bit. Aaron Boone was our third baseman,
Yeah.
and he was an SC guy, and found out that I was a UCLA guy, and so he comes up to me and gives me like the little, "Oh, Bruin, huh?" And I'm like, "Yep." And I just like stood my ground. I was totally intimidated on the inside, but I like kind of stood firm, and I'm like, "Yep." That was about it. That was about our interaction. And then Victor Martinez came over, and he like gave me a big hug, like congratulations, like welcome to the club, all this stuff. And I got to meet a bunch of the guys. Jake Westbrook, got to meet CC and those guys. And Cliff Lee was probably the one that I was really like, I was like, oh man, Cliff Lee, I'm like, you're amazing. Like, so it was just like a little kid, like meeting all these guys. Cause like, you knew who the Indians were when they played. Right. They were the powerhouse AL team besides the Yankees. And, during the 90s and early 2000s, like you got the Albert Bells, you got the, Carlos Baergas, you got all these big names that were just Sandy Alomar Jr. I got to meet him, and I was like, dude, I love you. So, I mean, it was just like different things, like guys that you grew up watching, and they were all there. And, I met Travis Hafner. He's like a gentle giant. He's just so intimidating because he's so big and looks mean. And then he starts talking. You're like, oh my God, you're like a little teddy bear. I love it. Like, you're just a big guy that's super nice and genuine. But yeah, I mean, it was amazing, man. I was like a kid in a candy store just looking at all these big guys, and I mean, they were massive. And then just to say that I'm a part of this organization was just amazing. It was wonderful. It was like a check bucket list type thing. It was really cool.
And it's funny how it turns around. Now Boone is the manager for the Yankees, and Sandy Alomar Jr. coaches the Indians now too, as assistant coach. But for you though, you made your debut in 2009 against the Tampa Bay Rays. You started against the Rays, and tell our fans about that day for you, and how grateful are you that you got to start against the Tampa Bay Rays?
Yeah, it was amazing. We were in Columbus, and we were about to go on a road trip, and I think I just threw in a game, but they cut it. I think they cut it short. I ended up throwing like 4 or 5 innings, and they didn't call me in yet, but I was just on the bench, just kind of like catching my breath and being done, and just kind of like slowly just unwinding. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go back in the locker room and pack up my bag, thinking like, I'm done for the day. I can go do my shoulder program. I can go get whatever work I need done, get ice, and then I'll kind of pack up my bag for the road trip. And John Nunnally, who was the hitting coach in Columbus at the time, because I think it was, it was Mike Sarbaugh. I'm getting managers confused because the year before it was Torey Lavello,
right,
and Scott Radinsky, and I forgot who the hitting coach. I think it might have been Nunnally as well. And then the following year, Mike Sarbaugh took over with, I think it was still Scott Radinsky, and then John Nunnally. And so I was about to go in, and Nunnally pulls me aside, and he goes, "Hey," what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm going to go inside, get my shoulder care, and get my stuff ready for our road trip. And he goes, "No, you're not." And I'm like, "Why? Like, what's wrong?" Like, I mean, I was young. I mean, I was 24 at the time. And I was sitting there and I'm just like, I'm thinking the worst immediately. So I'm thinking like, I'm going to get released. I got traded, like all this stuff just going through my head, freaking out a little bit. And I'm just like, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go pack up my bag for our road trip to like, I think we were going to like Durham or something like that. And I'm like, I'm going to go pack up my bag for Durham. And he goes, no, you're not. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, why are you being so evasive right now?
Yeah.
And so like keen, like just tell me. Like, he goes, bro, he goes, and he kind of pulls me aside and whispers in my ear. He goes, you're getting a call up.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah. He goes, so pack your bag, but not for Durham. And I'm like, oh, it's like the idiot. Like, I was just like, oh, okay, sure, all right. And because the Mike Sarbaugh at the time didn't say anything. He usually waits until like the end of this game, obviously, to tell anybody like what's going on. So I just assumed that I was just going to go and get all my stuff done and then get ready. And they're like, you know, me and Nuns have always been like pretty close. And he's just like, hey, dude, you know, like kind of gave me the nudge, wink, wink, like you're getting called up. And I'm like, okay. And so I go back in and I don't say anything. I don't have a smile on my face because they're like, hey, don't, you know, kind of play it off. Like, don't show any emotion. I'm like, okay. And so I kind of go in, do my shoulder care. I got like a little pep in my step, but I'm like, you know, I'm trying to keep my cool. And I come after the game, and sure enough, Coach Sarbaugh comes in and he goes, hey, Huff, come into my office. And I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. So I'm like, I'm at a loss for words, basically. I go in and he goes, hey man, he goes, you've done a great job for me. He goes, nice job tonight. He goes, I just want to let you know that you won't be joining us on the road trip. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, you're going to be joining the team in Tampa. And I'm like, I have no words. And he goes, congratulations. And I'm just like, oh, wow, like this is crazy. Like I made it. Like this is nuts. And so Eric Wedge and Carl Willis were the manager and head pitching coach at the time. And so sure enough, they're like, hey, you know, you're gonna go meet the team, but don't leave your room. And I'm like, okay. They're like, we haven't sent down the guy that you're replacing. So I'm like, that's kind of messed up, first off, but all right, yeah, I'll try and stick to my room. So sure enough, well, I'll just rewind back. So I walk out of his office, and I sit down in my locker, and sure enough, guys come over and start giving me hugs. And I'm talking like Luke Carlin, I think Chris Jimenez might have been there at the time, unless he might have been up. I'm not sure. It's all a little hazy at that point because I'm like freaking out at the time. But other guys are coming up to me and giving me big hugs or like congratulations. And I immediately get on the phone. I call my mom. I call my dad. And I'm like, hey guys, I'm like, I just want to let you know, like, you guys need to book a flight to Florida because I'm going to be getting called up to go pitch one of those games for my debut. And they immediately, like, my dad's not an emotional guy. He's always been pretty, not tough. He's very laid back, but you very rarely see like tears or anything from him because, I mean, the first time I ever saw him cry was when his mother passed away. And so like, outside of that, I've never seen anything from him. No like emotion. He'll smile, laugh, you know, he'll enjoy the moment, but very rarely something like this. And so I tell him I'm making my debut and he immediately starts crying. And I'm like one time I've only ever seen him cry. And my mom, she's an emotional wreck. So she's always crying every once in a while. So, yeah, it was just really cool. Like that's when it hit me. When my dad started crying, that's when it kind of hit me and I started crying. And it was like, like we try to be tough. We try to be like, the impenetrable, whatever person. but like that moment was just one of those moments where I couldn't help myself, and neither could my dad, obviously. So yeah, they ended up booking their flight, got out to took the red eye out to Florida. I ended up leaving the next day to meet the team. We got to the hotel, and sure enough, the team is like checking in when I'm getting there. And so I know obviously some of the guys on the big league team, and I'm just like, oh no, I'm like, they told me not to interact with the team,
Right.
and the team's right there. I'm like freaking out. I don't know if I need to like dive into a bush or if like, or whatnot. So I ended up quickly like grabbing my key and running to the elevator, and I kind of crossed paths with, it was Masahiro Kobayashi, I think was who was getting sent down. And I crossed paths with him, and I felt so, I didn't know at the time, but I just said, hey, how's it going? Like, Kumbawa, like, and good evening, because it was like nighttime there. And I was just wishing him like, all the best. And then sure enough, the next day they sent him down, and I had no idea, but I just, wished him the best and everything. And yeah, but it was really cool. The hotel's 5-star like golf resort hotel. It was super nice. We drove to, got in the bus the next day, came to the field with the team. And I was just like, eyes were this big, just looking everywhere. Like, oh my God, this is the big leagues. I've never been anywhere but like Dodger Stadium, Angel Stadium. Like, that's it. So, yeah, I got to the stadium, did my whole thing. The next day, I think I started, and I was going against Andy Sonnenstein with the Tampa. Mm-hmm. And it was the game that that Joe Madden screwed up the lineup card.
Oh,
he put Ben Zobrist and Evan Longoria at third base, and when he handed it to our manager Wedge, he screwed up. So he had to take Longoria out of the lineup. Zobrist played third, and Andy Sonnenstein had to hit for himself.
Wow.
And so it got totally screwed up. I'm making my debut. My first batter was BJ Upton.
All right.
I ended up walking him. I was just like, I mean, that day it was just like, I've done it 1,000 times. Like, I've pitched in a game 1,000 times. I've started so many games, but it just doesn't, it's just not the same. Like, when you make your debut, you're just trying to get your heart rate down because you're just trying to function correctly. Like, there's always that like little bit of like extra pump or extra like adrenaline when you're making your debut. So like, to try and calm yourself down is like one of the hardest things. And it was crazy, like absolutely nuts. I couldn't stop smiling. I was trying to like stay focused and serious on the mound, but it was just like, dude, I could give up 10 runs and I'd be like, whatever. Like, it was just so awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, after that, and obviously you spent like 4 years there in Cleveland, and then eventually they released you, but you got claimed off by the New York Yankees in 2013. And the funny thing is that you made your Yankee debut against the Tampa Bay Rays as a relief pitcher. So, so tell us that.
Yeah.
Tell our fans about that opportunity, and how were the Yankees the only team that claimed you, or was any other teams interested in you?
You know what? I don't know how the whole process worked because it was my first time going through it. I do know that I was in Columbus when it happened, and the feeling was like it was like a bad breakup with a girlfriend. And because I've been with Cleveland for 7 years, I mean, it was like 2006 to 2013 when I got claimed, and it was just like that's all I knew. And so I was, I was in my apartment, I was by myself, I was packing up my stuff when I heard I was stoked, don't get me wrong, like I was very happy that I got picked up. Brian Cashman called me. He was like, hey, Mr. Huff, just want to let you know we picked you up off of waivers. You're going to meet the team in Tampa. Just, we'll see you when you get here. The traveling secretary will reach out and call you about all the information for your flight. And I was like, okay, cool. So like that part was cool, but it was just like when I was packing up all my stuff, it was like just that empty feeling of like a bad breakup. And like I tried to focus on the positive, and hey, grass is always greener. We're in a new organization. Because they claimed you, that means they want you and they like you. And I just started focusing on that, and that kind of brought me back out into the positive light. And so I got to Tampa, met the team, obviously walked in, saw the captain, saw Cano, saw all these big names that like grew up. I mean, not even grew up watching, but like, yeah, I grew up watching Jeter. I started my professional career when Cano was, in the big leagues. Like, I watched all these guys, all these names. A-Rod was there, all these guys. And it was crazy. Like, it was awesome. And, Cano was like one of the guys that came up to me and just gave me a big hug and like welcomed me in. And I'm just like, oh my God, you're Robinson Cano. Like, like this is crazy. Like, you're my teammate now. Like, this is cool. Jeter and Mariano were there, and they were just kind of just their presence was like, I don't want to bother you because I don't want to like make you angry or annoyed in any way. Cause I'm just even though I'm a professional baseball player, I'm still a fan. Like it's still crazy. And so like I got to talking with a lot of the younger guys and hung out with like Sean Kelly and like Boone Logan and those guys. And those guys were like the core group because we were all in the bullpen together. And then like Mariano was just like on a pedestal. Yeah. Like at the end of the bench, it's like he could do no wrong. Like it was just like, oh my God, you're Mariano. Like it's crazy.
And you got
it was great.
You got to play with CC again too.
Yeah, got to see CC again. Got to see just a bunch of guys. It was awesome, man. Like it didn't quite have the whole pinstripe feeling because we were on the road. And then I pitched in that game, finished out the series. We ended up going back to New York, which was gorgeous, beautiful, loved everything about it. A lot of people, got a little crazy, a little stressful just in the whole traffic and just having so much people and everybody's in a hurry and the whole like New York rat race. Like it was just crazy. Like it's a different animal there. But I loved everything about it. It was crazy. Like I found a pizza place that was like this hole in the wall pizza place that had the greatest pizza ever. To me, the greatest pizza ever. I mean, it may not be to some New Yorkers, but I thought it was amazing compared to what we're getting in California. So, I mean, it was cool. Like we got back, we ended up playing the Mets at their place in Brooklyn. And I was in the bullpen and it was, there was this fan and I'll never forget this. So I grew up playing video games and one of the biggest video games I played was World Series Baseball for Sega Genesis. And the big team on that game were the Blue Jays. So like John Olerud, Paul Molitor, Gary Carter, like all those big names. So I see this guy in the stands wearing a Mets John Olerud jersey with the skull cap.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my God, I love your jersey. And he looks at me and he goes, and he completely flips me the bird. Oh. And because I'm in a Yankees uniform, obviously. So, so he flips me the bird and goes, screw you, man. Like, you're a Yankee. Like, screw you. This is Brooklyn. Then we're the Mets. Like, and I'm like, that's cool, bro. I'm like, that's cool, but I still love your jersey. So it was just a fun little moment in New York. Cause I mean, obviously those guys are diehard for Mets, Yankees, but I loved it. But unfortunately the next day, I think Jabba Chamberlain was coming off the DL. Right. I just got there. So I ended up getting DFA'd and clearing waivers, but working with Larry Rothschild, the pitching coach at the time, he fixed something on me that made me even better. So what I was trying to do is I wanted to stay. And I told my agent, I'm like, hey, I don't care what I need to do. I need to stay here. Right. He did something that helped me out so much. I'm like, I would absolutely love if I can get called back up to work with him. And so sure enough, I stay. I ended up going to Scranton, which was, it's Scranton. I don't know if you've ever been there, but
no, I've never been there yet. That's my goal, is to go to Scranton. Yeah.
It's okay. I mean, it's one of those cities that I wouldn't spend too much time there.
Okay.
You could probably do it all within about 2 days. So unfortunately, I mean, the field was amazing. It just got redone. It was perfect playing surface. It was a graveyard, so it was a pitcher's ballpark. I mean, at night you could throw that ball right down the middle and tell a hitter, try and hit it out.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't happen. So for me, it was a good experience. I got to work with Scotty Aldridge, who helped me out with a couple of my things, a cutter. I was trying to develop a cutter, and he helped me out. And then eventually, I think come August, I got called up and stayed in New York the rest of the season. And when I got called up, we were wearing the pinstripes at home. So then that really hit me, because when I first was there, we were only wearing road gray. So I never really got a chance to experience the pinstripes. And then when I got called back up, it was like, oh my God, pinstripes. So it was fun. I really enjoyed my time there.
Yeah. So speaking of stints, you had 2 stints with the Yankees. Obviously, you had to stint with the Giants first for a little bit, but how grateful were you when you got the chance to come back to the Yankees? Obviously, Larry Rothschild changed your career and obviously become a better pitcher. And what was it like just to come back to the Yankees and the team that believed in you after the Indians?
Yeah, it was great. I think they were very unfortunate that so they had to, over the off season, they were trying to keep me because they liked what I did, and they were it got to a point where I think they got rid of Vernon Wells.
Yeah,
he was on lock for over 10 mil. And the fact that they got rid of him over me, who I'm making like peanuts compared to him, I was like, wow, they must really like me. This is cool. And even my agent said that. He goes, look, they got rid of a guy they're paying him a lot of money compared to you, and they kept you over him. And they said, and Vernon's a great guy. I love playing with him. He was great, awesome guy. We had so many fun moments on the plane, flying to different cities and doing that whole thing. It was great. And so unfortunately they got rid of him. And then later on they were trying to keep me, but they ended up getting Masahiro Tanaka.
Yep.
And so they had no choice. They had to get rid of me. So we just said, hey, like, we love everything you do. We love everything you did for us. We really like what we want you, but we just can't keep you. And I said, okay. I'm like, that's fair. That's, to each their own. I'm like, I appreciate the gesture and everything. And I'm like, I'm glad. The one thing I really liked about New York is they were like brutally honest. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what a lot of organizations, I think, need. Like, you need to be honest with your guys. Like, we're grown men. We're gonna, there's gonna be ups and downs. We know there's a grind, to get to the big leagues and stay in the big leagues. But like some organizations that I've played for, they kind of dangle the carrot. And then you pitch and you do, whether you go out and show lights out or you go out and you don't do very well, like then they get rid of you, or they DFA you, or they send you back down or whatever. And it's just kind of like, wow. And you kind of just ride that emotional roller coaster. But like, I feel like just in my career, I feel like if an organization is just brutally honest, like, don't be like negative and tell a guy like he sucks, but like, if you just say, hey, you're just not quite there, we need to work on some things to fine tune some things, keep it positive, but still tell him, like, you're just not our guy right now. And I think if you are like that, I think you're going to get a better result out of guys. Guys will be pissed, it sucks. It's a business, but they need to understand that. Mm-hmm. But it's just like, if you're always dangling the carrot, like, oh, dude, you're like our 5th or 6th starter, right, that we're looking to call up. And if you do this, this, and this, you'll get that call up. Well, you end up doing what they ask, and then you don't get the call up, and you're like, well, what did I do wrong? Like, I did everything you guys asked me. And it's situations like that I think really rub guys the wrong way, where it's like, you guys are kind of full of it.
Right.
And it's just like, just be honest with me. Don't, if I'm not your guy, don't tell me I'm your guy, So, the fact that the Yankees, they went and got Tanaka, they explained the whole situation. It was a business decision. They said, we just have no choice. We have to do this and we don't want to do it. It wasn't performance-based. We loved everything that you were doing and we're sorry. If we can somehow get the chance and get you back, we are going to try and do it.
Right.
So like they made that was the conversation between me and Cashman. I was like, great. I'm like, that's okay. That's cool. And then literally 2 or 3 days later, the Giants picked me up. So I was like, all right, cool. So I'm going to go to, I'm going to be in Scottsdale. I'm not going to be in Florida. So like, the last time I was in Florida was Winter Haven for the Indians before we made the move to Goodyear. So I was like, I don't really have a very good picture of Florida right now. So I just remember it being very humid. I was hurt in 2017. I was there for July, August, September, and it was miserable. And we were in Winter Haven, so it wasn't too great of a city. I don't know what kind of city it was. It was, we didn't really venture out. But it was, it is what it is. But so now I'm coming into Scottsdale and I'm meeting everybody for the first time. I'm meeting Sergio. Sorry, I can't even think right now. Sergio Romo. I'm meeting Hunter Pence, Buster Posey, Tim Lincecum, like all these big names, and I'm like, really cool. I'm like, these guys have won 2 World Series, and they're they're looking to keep it together and get after it and win another one this year. And the clubhouse atmosphere, I kid you not, was the best chemistry I've seen out of any organization. Like most organizations, guys show up, they have their buddies, their cliques, position players, pitchers, whatever it is, bullpen starters, whatever it is. But sometimes it just doesn't really mesh well. I mean, you're pulling from one another, but it just doesn't mesh well. And for the Giants, it was like, it felt like if we didn't have the Giants organization, we would still be buddies and we'd still go to bars and restaurants together and like enjoy each other's time. Like it was that kind of chemistry. Like it was like your best friend growing up, and then you guys depart and go your separate ways and have families and do that whole thing. And then you meet up like 20, 30 years down the line. And it's like, you guys never missed a beat.
Right.
Like that's kind of how the chemistry was in the clubhouse. Like it was great. And it was a fun experience. That was the year Matt Cain sliced his hand on a butcher knife, I guess he dropped it in the kitchen and tried to catch it, but caught the wrong end of it.
Wow.
And so he sliced his hand. And then so I ended up going to spring training, making a team out of camp. I don't even think I gave a run. I don't even think I gave up a run that spring, which felt really good. And then I broke with the team, played there for about 2.5 months. And then the last week I scuffled just a little bit. I had a bad game against the Marlins at home. And then I had a tough one against the Cubs. And then we ended up going to Cincinnati, and I finally turned it around. And after that game, when I turned it around, they called me into the office and they're like, hey, we're sorry to do this. Matt Cain is coming off the DL from obviously the hand thing. And you are unfortunately the guy that's got to go. And it was Bruce Bochy and Rigetti. And we were all there, and they were just talking to me. They're like, look, we love what you've been doing. You've done everything we've asked. That whole conversation again. And, it's just, you drew the short end of the stick. So you're the one that's got to go. And we're very, very sorry. We really love everything you've done. So I was like, okay, cool. Like I can hang my hat on that. Like that's all right. 2 days later, the Cashman calls me again. And he's like, hey, Mr. Huff, he goes, we claimed you off of waivers, just like I told you we would try and do. And you're coming to New York. And I was like, all right, cool. So, I mean, I already knew what I was getting myself into. I mean, it was great. I mean, there was a couple new faces, a few young guys, getting to know them and everything. But all in all, I think probably like 85% of the team was still the same team that I was last year. And it was great. I went back and fit right in and played there and pitched really well. And yeah, it was great. It was nice to be back with Rothschild and and my teammates and everybody. And Joe Girardi was our manager at the time, and it was great.
Yeah. So before we get to like the KBO league and all the NPB league, I got to ask you, how tough is it for you to move from team to team, and obviously you got released multiple times, but getting a lot more opportunities, especially after the Yankees, you went to the Dodgers, and you ended up going to the Angels, the first team that drafted you. But just tell our fans how tough is it for you and your family just to keep moving from team to team?
Well, in 14, my wife and I were just pregnant with our firstborn. We found out after a day game. She wasn't feeling too well the morning of the day game, and then I went and played. Thankfully, I didn't have to pitch.
Right.
And then because traveling with just her was easy. It was, we made a deal like, hey, if we are separated no longer than 2 weeks. So like, she had her own job, she had her own life. She was doing her own thing, being a professional makeup artist. And so for me, it was like, we're not going to be apart longer than 2 weeks. And I said, okay, that's perfectly fine. Let's make that work. So she was always traveling around and coming to like, I'm like, hey, what cities do you want to see? Like, we're going to Minnesota. She's like, yeah, I've never been to Minnesota. Let's go to Minnesota. Hey, we're going to Detroit. Nah, I don't really want to go to Detroit. I'm like, okay, that's fine. No worries. We're going to Toronto. I don't really want to go to Toronto. Okay, that's fine. So like, she came to different places. Most of the time it was New York, because New York was kind of like, it's hard to beat New York.
Right.
So she loved coming there. So every time we had like a homestand or a long one, like about 2 weeks worth, she would be there. And so like, that really helped kind of, with everything. As far as traveling, like with kids, that got a lot harder. Like I finished out the season with New York in 14. We just missed playoffs. So like, we were there until like literally the end. Ended up getting picked up by the Dodgers. Dodgers were it was nice because it was like 45 minutes from my house. But it was a revolving door. The way Friedman and Zaidi ran the club. We had an amazing AAA staff, amazing AAA team. It was Damien Berryhill was our manager. Scott Radinsky was our pitching coach, and it was just a well-oiled machine. Is basically the best way to put it. We had about probably roughly 20 million in what do you call it, in salary sitting in AAA. We had Chris Heisey, we had Darwin Barney, we had Sergio Santos, we had Trevor Cahill, we had Scott Baker, we had a lot of name guys that were getting paid 7 figures just sitting in AAA. Waiting for the call. And that's just kind of how the Dodgers did it.
Yeah.
They had basically a major league team sitting in AAA.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, we ended up, we almost got 100 wins that season. In 100, obviously 42 game season, we ended up, I think, like 97 or 98 wins.
Yeah.
It was a fun year. And, Gabe Kapler was our minor league director at the time. And, it was great. Like, I spent most of my time in OKC, which is fine. I'm not too hurt on that. I think when I got called up for the big league team, I wish I would have done better.
Yeah.
I scuffled my first start, and then they moved me to the bullpen, and then I kind of was doing good, but not great. So yeah, they just kind of sent me down, and the thing is what they do is they pay you a bunch of money. And then when they DFA you, no team wants you because you're getting paid too much money. So no one wants to pick up the contract. So then you clear waivers and you don't want to go anywhere else because you're not going to make that money. And then they just put you right back at OKC. So it's like, it's a great business plan. Like you're going to pay guys more money, but like if you want to hold on to a guy, that's kind of how you got to do it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was a very smart business plan for them, and they got the best results. I think they ended up going to, I think they lost to the Cardinals in the NLCS that year. But yeah, so then the following year I ended up with Kansas City for spring training. Threw well. I was in Omaha for 2 months this season when I finally just said, okay, it looks like they're just going to be sticking to their 40-man guys. So I took my out, and the Angels, Billy Epler, who was with the Yankees underneath Cashman, he was now the GM of the Angels, and Epler stepped up and goes, hey, we got a job for you if you want it. I was like, yeah, let's do it. I'm like 20 minutes from my house. Absolutely. And so, and then he offered me the money, and I was like, I already accepted it, dude. It's cool. So, no, it was great. Like when they called and they wanted me on there, I was like, yeah, man, this is awesome. Got to Salt Lake City, because that's where they were originally going to have me go. It wasn't like they were going to. I wasn't going to Anaheim right out the gate. So I ended up in Salt Lake City for a little bit. Got called up because I had another out coming up, and they thought that I was going to take it. But secretly, I probably wasn't, because I love Salt Lake City and I loved Anaheim. But they called me up, and I didn't do. It was the dream job, and I was more focused on, oh my God, this is a dream job, rather than like pitching, basically. So I ended up struggling and got DFA'd, and then that's when my agent was like, hey, do you want to just try going overseas? And I was like, they've been on me for since probably 2010, and this was 2016 now. Every time I was in the minor leagues, it was this one guy, Andre, who has been constantly on me, like, hey dude, any interest in going to Korea? Any interest? And I'm like, nah, man, I'm cool. Like right now I'm good. Cause every year, every time he talked to me, I was like just about getting to the big leagues. And so it was like, now at 2016, I was like, yeah, I'm done. So I ended up going over to Korea, and it was, oh my gosh, big life change.
Right.
We had Ethan, I think, was like 1 or 2, our oldest son at the time. And I ended up going over there by myself just to kind of get everything kind of established. And then Lisa and my son came over later, and it was a wonderful experience. Just life experience in general. It was awesome. Baseball may not have been as good as it is here. But it was still fun. Like it was, I got treated with the utmost respect. I was pitching really well. It was the first time in my career that I've ever had like stardom. Like it was one of those things, like I'd be walking the street and people would stop me and say, hey, can I get an autograph? And whereas in like when I was in New York, I was taking the D train from Manhattan all the way up to the Bronx. Right. And not one person, like, they just thought I was some other hipster. So it was just like, I was just like, all right, cool. Like, this is really cool. It's the first time I ever had this in my career. And it was actually really cool. Like I just kind of kept going and pitched really well out there. And yeah, it was great.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. So speaking of, before we get to the Korean League, speaking of Billy Epler, congrats to him. He just got the Mets job as a GM. Yeah, so congrats to him. He deserves that. He's one of the best, in my opinion. Obviously, he didn't get enough time with the Angels, but I feel like the Mets got a good one in Billy Epler.
Absolutely. He hands down probably one of the best GMs I've had an opportunity to play for. He was great when he was the assistant, learning everything he'd learned from Brian Cashman in New York. He was great when he was with the Angels. Yeah, I think you're right. I think he just needed some more time, and I think the Angels were not. See, the Angels are good every year, but they never make playoffs. Yeah. So it's like it's getting to a point where it's like, okay, we need to get the right fit and start winning and making playoffs, or else I'm just gonna, like, Artie Moreno's he's probably stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like the fan base wants a playoff race. they want to get back to that, what was it, 2001 team that won it. Like it's hard. It's very hard. And, for him, it was almost like he was skating on thin ice from the get go. And so I felt bad for him when he left, when he got fired from or let go from the Angels. But I'm stoked that he got the New York job. That's great.
Yeah. So tell our fans about the language barrier for you. How long did it take you to get adjusted for the Korean language? And did you end up learning the Korean language while you were there?
I ended up learning a little bit of Korean, just basic words, and I kind of it was like I was speaking like an infant.
Mm-hmm.
I'd point and then say what I wanted, like say what it was or what I wanted. And I was always going to a lot of restaurants that had pictures.
Yeah.
So like, oh, that looks good, I want that. So the language barrier, yeah, it was tough. Now I truly understand what it's like when Japanese Korean players come here and play, and even Latin guys as well, like learning English and doing so. Like every Asian player that I've ever played with and every Latin player that I've ever played with, they pick up the language so quick.
Right.
And it's crazy. Like I'm just like, this is amazing. Like I am trying to pick up their language. I mean, when it came to Spanish, I was like high school, college, and it's true what they say, if you don't use it, you lose it. And so I kind of lost it from there. And then, going over to Korea, I thought was a way more difficult language. And it was hard. Like I was able to communicate with players, and the translator was always there with me, helping me out. I think when I got to Japan, I picked up Japan more and faster in Japan, like Japanese language, than I did with the Korean language. I felt like the Korean language was just a little bit harder to kind of pick up.
Yeah. So speaking of, obviously you play the NPB league. If no one knows about that league, explain more about that league, and what was it like playing in Japan and Korea, both?
It's I would say the closest thing to Major League Baseball in America is probably the Japanese league.
Mm-hmm.
You have definitely your hitters in Korea that are good enough to play in the big leagues here. I mean, as you're seeing, like there's Korean players, there's Japanese players playing in the big leagues right now as we speak. I think as far as culture goes, I think they're very similar. I mean, obviously, if you ask a Korean guy and a Japanese guy, they're going to spout off all the differences between the two. But just on an outsider looking in, there's a lot of similarities. There's obviously a lot of differences. The thing that I liked the most about it was the respect.
Right.
So if you're an older gentleman and a young person comes up to you and disrespects you, that's like the ultimate sin. So the older you get, the more respect you command. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be the richest guy in the world, or you could be in poverty right now. As long as you're the older guy, you command the same amount of respect as the billionaires.
Mm-hmm.
So it's crazy. Like I'll tell you a little story. I was sitting in a coffee shop in Korea, and this older gentleman, he was probably like in his 60s. It's hard because they're like ageless wonders over there. He was probably 60 and above. This guy behind him, he was a taxi cab driver, and he was trying to finishing his fare, and it was some woman that was very nice, and I'm just sitting in the coffee shop, and I'm just people watching. And this gentleman behind him, like, because it's the oncoming traffic is like stopped, and he's parked over the side, but the car behind him can't get around him, so he's sitting there just laying on the horn. And this older gentleman that's trying to finish up his fare and get his money gets out of the car and looks at the guy. The honking immediately stops. The younger gentleman comes up and says he's sorry. The older gentleman smacks him like a little child on the face or something like that. Not hard, but just like, like, hey, don't let it happen again. And the young guy just kept backing up and like bowing and as he went back to his car. And I sat there and I was like, oh my God, like that's crazy. Like I can't even believe that. And so it was just a really interesting like dynamic how they had, and Japan's the same way. Yeah. It's if you're older, you command respect. The only thing that I didn't like about Japan was the younger players were like borderline slaves to these older guys.
Wow.
And I was like, dude, that's not right. Like all the young guys would come up to me and they're like, you know, trying to like, anything you need, please let me know. I'll get it for you. I'm like, no, dude. I'm like, that's not how it works. Like, no, like do your thing, be you. Don't worry about me. Like,
wow.
You do you, I'll do me. Don't worry. So that was the one. I mean, everything was amazing. That was probably the one thing that stuck out that I was just like, I don't know. But I mean, they have crazy things there, like on the subway. You know, it's not first come, first serve. There's a priority seating for like pregnant, elderly, injured, all this handicap, all like these seats. The train can be packed like sardines, but those seats will be open because everybody on the train is healthy, young, or whatever. They will not sit in those seats at all.
Wow.
So my wife, being pregnant, was riding the train, and people immediately got up for her and like so she could sit down. I mean, she's like 6-7 months pregnant. Like she's clearly showing. Like she's a skinny little twig, and she's got this big ball on her stomach. Like people know she's pregnant. So it's like as soon as she walked on the plane, it was like someone parted the Red Sea. Like it was amazing. It was. So like there's different aspects in the culture that I was just like, wow, like that's amazing, like unreal. And then there's other aspects that I was just like, I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah. So, but after your career in Japan career, you signed with the Diamondbacks with the minor league deal, but nothing worked out there. But this is interesting. This is you played in the 14 independent league because of COVID. Yep. So take us to that process. What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was crazy. So COVID hit obviously in 2020, and then I had a little bit of an impingement in my shoulder, and so I ended up getting workers' comp and getting back to normal and getting back to health. And when I was healthy and I got cleared by the doctor, the Diamondbacks released me. So I ended up, you know, still working out, still kind of doing my thing, and all of a sudden I started catching word that from a few of my buddies that were in the same boat I was, free agents, just unsigned. And they were telling me about Texas. And I was like, Texas? I'm like, what are we doing in Texas? They're like, we're going to Sugar Land. And I was like, for what? And they're like, there's a league going on. It's called the Consolation Energy League. Here's the number to the guy that's heading it all up. Give him a call. And, you know, it's basically just a 4-team showcase league. And, you know, Pete Incavaglia, who is, I guess, he's the longtime manager of the Skeeters. He was like a legend apparently out there. The Clemens kids were coaching one I get the kids' names mixed up. I think it's Cody Clemens is the oldest.
Roger Clemens kids you talking about?
Yeah. It's so Roger was occasionally there like once a week. And then his oldest son, I think it's Cody or Kobe.
I think
Clemens.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Cody though. I gotta double check that one.
Yeah, I get those kids mixed up. He's got like 4 or 5 kids that play baseball. So it's like it's really so he was coaching one team, and then Dave Island was coaching another team who was with the Royals when I was there.
Yep.
And then Greg Swindell was coaching the team that I played for, the Lightning Sloths. So we had Team Texas, which was all like Clemens buddies and kind of college kids. Then we had the Skeeters, which was the independent ball team that was already like organized and put together. Then we had the Reyes del Tigre, which is Tiger King team. And so that was like Dave Island, and then Jose Cruz Jr. came out and helped out. And then Greg Swindell and Todd Haney were the 2 coaches that were doing the Lightning Sloss, which was the team that I was on.
Right.
And so I was there with like Zach Rosscup, Joe Whelan, I'm blanking. Robbie Ross was
Robbie
there.
Ross. Okay.
Yeah, long time like Red Sox reliever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was there, and it was a blast. I mean, we weren't. I mean, it wasn't much money, but it was just a chance to showcase your stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was great in a sense that, like, if I had the mentality, if one of us gets picked up by a major league team, then it's a win. Because they're paying us to be there. We're barely, it was hardly anything. But like, if one of us gets picked up, that's a win. And I think it ended up being like almost like nine guys got picked up out of the league, which was great. It was mostly to the Astros because they were right at the road, but it was awesome. I mean, it was a fun experience. My wife was home with both of our boys, so she was kind of losing it a little bit, but she's like, you better pitch well out there, like all this stuff. She's like, I'm home with the kids. I'm like, yeah, don't worry, I'm going to pitch well. And I ended up pitching really well. I struggled. I think I had 14 or 15 appearances, and I think every one of my appearances but 2 were great. And unfortunately, I didn't get picked up, so it is what it is. But then the following year, I ended up back here and working out and getting picked up by the Mariners.
Yeah.
Because they got hit by the injury bug, and they were dropping like flies. I felt so bad because one of my buddies, Brendan Demaraki, works in the front office for those guys. And our kids are really good friends. And so like our kids are always going to the parks. We're always calling each other up like, hey, what park you guys want to go to? Different things like that. And I told him, I said, hey, I'm like, let's go to this park today. And so he shows up, and he's a Stanford grad. Like, he's always clean cut, clean shaved, like always looking good. And so he shows up, and his hair is all over the place. He's got like full 5 o'clock shadow.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, man, are you okay? like I'm immediately like, are you all right? And he goes, man, we are hurt. And I'm like, and I've never once asked him for like help for a job or anything like that. I'm like, do you need help? I'm like, I've been throwing, I've been staying in shape. I'm like, it's all what do you need? I'm like, I can help if you need me. And he turns to me and goes, how much have you been throwing? I'm like, I've been throwing a lot. Mm-hmm. I'm playing long toss. I'm throwing bullpens. He goes, how many pitches in your bullpens? And so he starts like kind of asking all these questions. And I'm like, I usually throw 45 to 50 pitches in my bullpen. I just got off the Rapsodo. It was a Monday. So I just got off the Rapsodo Saturday. And, I was facing hitters, and I threw probably anywhere like 60 to 80 pitches. And he goes, oh, you're like stretched out. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, it's easier to be a starter going into an organization and become a reliever than it is to become a reliever and try and stretch out to be a starter. And so I told Brennan, I said, I'm here if you need me, just let me know. I'm like, I'm trying to make sure that I'm ready for anything that pops up. And so he's like, hey, he goes, that's good to know. He goes, I might call you in the next couple hours, and it might not be a place to like find out what park you want to take our kids to. And I was like, okay. I'm like, I just kind of laughed it off, just kind of chuckled it off, and just kind of went my separate way. And that was about it. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I get home, and literally like 2 hours on the dot, he calls me up. He goes, hey, we got an offer for you. And I was like, all right. I'm like, what is it? He goes, it's the same thing as last year with the Diamondbacks. He goes, we'd love to have you. We need you. I was like, okay. I'm like, how soon do you need me? This is like, because I'm like, my family, like I got to pack. I've got nothing packed up. And he goes, can you leave tomorrow? And I was like, I can try. Like, I was just like, knowing full well I couldn't physically do it. I'm just like, I can try. And he goes, you know what? When do you want to leave? And I was like, just give me like a couple days. I'm like, it was Monday at the time. I'm like, give me till like Wednesday. And I said, I'll be ready Wednesday. And he said, all right. And so sure enough, hopped on a plane. I think they booked me for a Thursday flight, hopped on a plane, flew to met the team in Salt Lake City. And yeah, and played there for 4 months. It was amazing. It was the first time in my career where I was like, I wasn't looking over my shoulder after every bad outing. I was like, I wasn't grinding. I was just out there having fun.
Right.
Because I just kind of like knew, like, I'm the old guy. I'm 36 years old. All these guys are in their 20s. I mean, there was a couple guys that were kind of in their 30s, but it was getting to a point where I was like, I'm not going to stress. I'm like, chances are I'm probably going to be in Tacoma all year unless I catch lightning in a bottle and they call me up. That's about it. So that's kind of the way I went into it. And it ended up being a blast. Like my wife and my kids came out and it was just amazing.
Yeah, so I got the 4 kids here: Cody, Clemens, Casey, Corey, and Kobe. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, it was, the oldest one was Cody or Kobe. I don't know. He was the one that was coaching. He was the one that was coaching. He wasn't playing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so obviously, I forgot to mention this before. You also competed in the Pan American Games. You won silver in 2015 in Toronto with men's USA Baseball. What was that like for you? What was the experience like there?
You know what? That was probably the most intense baseball I've ever played, emotionally, because you're no longer just playing for like an organization. You're no longer playing for yourself. You're playing for Team USA. And when you put on the colors, it's a completely different animal. And just the emotion in every pitch, the emotion in every game, every swing, just everything about it. People say it's Johnny Rah Rah or anything like that. It's true pure emotion, and you're trying to win for your country. Unfortunately, we took home silver. It was a heartbreaker to Canada, the home country, and it's kind of just been one of those things that's kind of always been like a little bit of a regret for me. I wish I could have done better, because I think I was probably the main reason why we got silver.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's tough to swallow, but I mean I've moved on, and just trying to not think about it. No offense, but like it's just it was one of those things that it was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. My family was able to make it out there and watch me play, which was amazing. And it was a very pleasurable experience up until that last game. So no, it's cool. I mean, I got the silver medal in my house, actually in my safety deposit box, just sitting there and for safekeeping. So I haven't quite figured out where I want to put it in the house yet. I'm getting there.
So a couple more things here before I let you go. So obviously now it's big time in MLB for free agency, and whether or not they're going to agree to this the collective bargain agreement. If not, they're going to you can't do anything until they agree. So December 1st is the deadline. So we're going to play a little game here. It's called MLB free agency prediction game.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you a few names, and you're going to tell our fans where you think they're going to go.
Okay, I'm ready.
First one is David Huff.
Honestly, I don't know. If there is going to be a baseball season after the collective bargaining agreement happens, I kind of gave myself a little bit of a deadline, because I feel good. My body feels good. I'm throwing low 90s with my fastball. I know where it's going. I can throw strikes. I can get people out, but the way baseball is going nowadays, they want young guys that throw 95 plus. And I'm not one of those guys. So, for me, it's, I'm kind of giving myself a deadline of April 1st, if there is going to be a season. And, if I have a job by then, great, I'll keep playing. If I don't, then I'm probably going to retire. I'm like, I got other avenues that I'm exploring right now. And, I'm getting a taste of retirement, being home with my boys. My boys love that I'm home for an extended period of time right now. My wife sure appreciates it. So, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to kind of just take in this moment, and, I'm working out like I would for any season, getting ready to throw and different things like that at this point in the off season, just to make sure that I'm ready for anything. for me, it's just kind of, that's where I'm at now.
Hmm.
Mentally, I'm ready. I can pitch anywhere. I just, I'm trying to get back overseas, maybe finish my career over there, try and get a job here. I got a couple teams calling to see if I want to coach. I'm just like, I don't know, because I'm still interested in playing.
Right.
So I don't really know what's going to happen. It's just kind of up in the air right now, but I do have alternatives if it doesn't pan out and doesn't work out for me. So I'm happy to go down those paths for another career job or something else. I just haven't. I mean, I'm coaching right now. I just finished coaching my kids' little league team, which was fun. It was nice to see him do really, really well. I'm coaching over at Horizon High School for volunteer, just to kind of help out and kind of get the name out there. And I'm also doing private lessons. So I mean, that's for right now. It's definitely not a career job for after baseball, but it's something that works for right now. So I'm doing that.
Yeah. So teams, whoever's looking for a starter or reliever, David Huff is your guy. So there you go. Carlos, Carlos Correa.
Carlos Correa. Wow. You know what? He's a good player. I faced him when he first started coming up through the system at the Astros, and he's a really explosive player. I don't know. I don't know where he's going to end up. I know teams are going to be salivating, wanting to get him. So it's going to come down to, what teams need. And, I honestly don't know. It's really tough for me to say.
Corey Seager.
Oh, he's a free agent.
Yeah.
Oh man. I'd love to see him in a Dodger uniform if they can keep him, because he's homegrown. He's been a Dodger his whole life. If not, I mean, whoever picks him up is going to be really happy with what they got, because he was one of the best players I got to see when he was in OKC before he got called up, and he was really impressive, very impressive.
Max Scherzer.
Wow. I mean, any team is going to be lucky enough to get him. You know what you're getting. I mean, he's a finished product. He's a perfected product. And I mean, he's one of those deals that you're just gonna, if you can afford him, I would recommend getting him. So it's one of those deals. It's like, what you're getting. Like he's lights out. He's at least 180 innings every year. I think he gets up there around 200 innings every season. And he's even better in playoffs. So I mean, if he is also getting older, I think he's my age or maybe a year younger. He's proven. I mean, it's hard to say no to Max Scherzer. So I think anybody who can step up and make a fair offer for him will definitely like what they get.
All right, here's the last one. Robbie Ray.
Ooh, coming off the Cy Young.
Yeah.
That's tough. He was good when he was with the Diamondbacks. I just something just didn't click there. And then he gets out of the Diamondbacks organization. He takes off. Coming from Toronto. I mean, Toronto's always in the hunt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd like to see him go back. That's just kind of where I'm at with him. I think I'd like to see him go back to Toronto and stay with his old team. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with Max Scherzer. You kind of, now you're getting a guy that's now showing what he can do. Now it's just a matter of, okay, can he do it consistently? Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see where he lands.
Yeah, so before we get to the last two things, I just want to ask you about playing with Mariano real quick, because obviously you were in the same bullpen as him and you got to learn a lot from him, being there, just seeing how he goes about his business. So for you, the period the time spent when you were there, what was it like just to be his teammate, learning from him, and what advice did he give you, or what did he teach you in the bullpen?
What a lot of people don't know about him is he is a goofball. Yeah. And he's the guy that when we're out in stretch in front of the dugout, he's the guy that's chewing gum and then throwing it and hoping somebody steps on it. So he's like a little prankster.
Mm.
Obviously, fans and people who watch him pitch, you don't see that side of him. But he's like a little prankster, and he's a great guy. Quiet, but he is approachable. He does have that kind of nostalgia, like it just like, I don't want to bother you,
Right.
you know, like, but he welcomes you, and you know, like if you have a question, like you want to sit down and talk to him, he helps you out. So I mean, he's a great guy to kind of. I wouldn't overdo it with him, because you know he's obviously a professional. Like during when he was playing, he was a professional. He had a lot of work that he needed to like lock in for and all that stuff. But yeah, he was awesome. I got to talk to him about his cutter.
Yeah.
He kind of showed me. So like he does like the cross four seam grip, and so like I got to talk to him a little bit about that, and I tried to do it, but it would go and then kind of flatten out. And so it wasn't until I got sent down and started talking to Scotty Aldridge and like, you know, this is what Mariano taught me. Like, what do you got? And then he's like, well, let's change the grip up a little bit. And then I changed it, and all of a sudden the thing was just taking off. So, you know, with him, I mean, he's got a lot of information. I think the one thing that I took from Mariano was just his personality when he's on the mound, his demeanor of just having ice in the veins. Like nothing ever really got to him. And so the one thing that really stuck out to me when in his last year, we were playing Detroit, and it was a 4-game series, and Mariano comes in the second game, faces Miggy, cutter away. Miggy goes with it and puts it out to right field, ties the game up. So we go extras. I think we ended up beating them or whatever. I'm not really sure. Next game comes in, tie ball game, fiddling around with Miggy. Miggy, of course, is up again. Throws it again. He hits another home run to like, I think it was like right center or right field.
Right.
Cutter down and away. And Miggy really, his power is to right center.
Yeah.
I mean, he can turn and burn on something, but his power is to right center. And so, you know, he's obviously a hard out. Well, third game or the final game, same situation. We're up by probably 2 runs, runner on, Miggy comes up. He goes cutter down and away. He takes it for a ball. Then he goes 2-seam, middle in, and absolutely blows up Miguel Cabrera at the plate. I'm talking shards of bat fan.
Yeah.
Blows him up. And all of us in the bullpen were like, oh my God, what pitch was that? Because the thing we have a screen in the bullpen so we can watch the strike zone and stuff. It's not live. It's like a 15-20 second delay. But so like we watch out there and then we watch the screen on where the pitch was. And Mariano threw a 2-seam. And we're sitting there going like, dude, he never throws 2 seams. He always throws cutter. I mean, everybody knows that. And so he throws his 2-seam in on Miggy's hands and blows him up.
Wow. And
we came into the clubhouse. We ended up winning the game, and we came into the clubhouse, and everybody's like, "Wow, was that a 2-seam?" He goes, doesn't even say a word, just smiles and just nods. And I'm just like, he's like a little like silent assassin. Like he's just one of those guys. He's just quiet, but he just I don't know. He's incredibly intelligent when it comes to pitching and everything, and just aspects of life. Like he's a great teammate.
Yeah, that's our dream interview, hopefully. But the last 2 things here before I let you go, our team is part of this foundation. It's called the Hugh Jackson Foundation. He's a former NFL coach, but now he's the offensive coordinator for Tennessee State with Eddie George, and we're trying to help him prevent human trafficking, making sure the community stays safe and the kids stay safe. And it's so horrible out there what we're seeing. And we're gonna send you the foundations to you and your wife so you can go check it out also.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got a buddy of mine, Robbie Ross. He does
Okay.
Mission 108, and they do the
Oh,
same thing.
okay.
Yeah, so it's great. Like the more recognition, the more to stop that industry is I'm all for it.
Nice. Yeah, so we'll send it to you. And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and all the essential workers right now?
Yeah, we got to tell you like that we are so appreciative of your hard work and your dedication to not just put other people in front of yourself. And we will forever be grateful in everything you guys do. um, I really hope that more and more people are more appreciative of the hard work that you guys put yourselves through, because I mean I can't even imagine mentally, physically, and emotionally what you guys go through every day in and day out with everything that's going on. It's really tough. I wish there was some way I can help. I don't even think I could even do anything close to what they do. And I just hope that the recognition and the appreciation goes out to everybody in the world, and makes them think like the people that do all that, the first responders, the police, the firemen, the doctors, the nurses. I mean, everybody. Like, I mean, we've been through the gauntlet right now with this whole
Sure.
pandemic, and they've been putting their lives on the line to just help people. And I hope that someday everybody will look back and just say, "Wow, this is," and just be so appreciative and grateful for what these people have done for us.
Yeah, well said there. So that wraps up episode 941 with MLB free agent pitcher David Huff. He also played in the Korean League, Japan League, Independent League. This was truly an honor. I learned a lot today from this interview. And David, I hopefully you get another chance playing in the majors. But keep up the great work, and thank you again for coming on the show. And we would like to have you back on the show at some point down the line so you can meet the full team. But like I said, thank you again. This was awesome, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem.